I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. At a press conference on Wednesday, the House Republican leadership blasted Joe Biden over border security. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik also urged President Biden to keep Title 42. Take a listen to the press conference.
Good morning. Today we are honored to have with us special guests focused on highlighting Joe Biden's border crisis. We have Tom Homan, who is a constituent of my district, former ICE director, Mark Morgan, former Customs and Border Patrol Commissioner, Brandon Junn, president of the National Border Patrol Council, Derek Maltz, a retired DEA special agent. Today's special guests, as I mentioned, discussed our crisis at the southern border with the House Republican Conference. And make no mistake, this is an invasion. We also have with us here today our whip, Steve Scalise, Congressman Chip Roy, who was instrumental in preparing this briefing today, and Congressman Tony Gonzalez, who has hosted numerous delegation visits of Republicans to the southern border. I recently participated with Leader McCarthy on one of those recent visits to the southern border in Congressman Gonzalez's district. We met with local elected officials, business leaders, ranchers, and community members, and importantly, law enforcement officers on the border. They told us about the devastating impacts that Joe Biden's border crisis has had on their communities and on their families. When we met with Border Patrol agents on the front lines, they said that this crisis will get even worse with the Biden administration's catastrophic plan to lift Title 42. And this isn't just a problem or crisis for districts in Texas or along our southern border. We're also feeling this crisis in states like New York, in my home congressional district. Make no mistake, every state is a border state, every district is a border district. You see, I represent Border Patrol families in the North Country in New York. Some of these agents have been transferred from the northern border to the southern border over and over and over again, taking these hardworking officers away from their families and leaving our northern border understaffed. Law enforcement all across the country are also seeing skyrocketing fentanyl overdoses from the lethal fentanyl flooding across Joe Biden's open southern border. This is an unthinkable tragedy affecting families everywhere. These are heartbreaking stories of loss of life. House Republicans remain committed to holding Democrats accountable for this catastrophic failure. You do not have a country if you do not have secure borders. I would like to pass it on to our first special guest, Tom Homan, former director of ICE, again, who's a constituent from New York's 21st Congressional District. Tom.
Hey, thanks for being here. Look, I started my career as a Border Patrol agent in 1984. I'm the oldest guy up here. But I spent 35 years enforcing immigration law. I'm going to say this. I worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I ever worked for came into office and wanted to secure the border because they realized a secure border protected our national security. Joe Biden's the first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured the most secure border we ever had. This is just not an immigration crisis anymore. It's just not a public health and public safety crisis anymore. This is a national security crisis. We have recorded over 700,000 gotaways since he came into office. They've arrested 42 people on the terrorist screening database. Terrorists don't want to be arrested. They evade law enforcement. So if they arrested 42, how many of the 700,000 came to this country to do us harm that got away? They weren't fingerprinted, they weren't arrested. We have no biographic information. They weren't vetted. That just scared the hell out of every American. Border Patrol's arrested people from 161 countries. Many of these countries sponsor terrorism. If anybody's going to sit there and say, I don't think a single one of that 700,000 came here to do us harm, then you're ignorant. This is a national security issue. For the first time in my life, I've never been more concerned about the safety and security of this nation than I am right now. And they did it on purpose. It's time the American people stand up and demand we secure the border. It's time people stand up and demand the Secretary of Homeland Security actually tell the truth under oath. When he says the border is secure and they have operational control, talk to the men and women of the Border Patrol. They have lost operational control of our southern border. This country no longer can contain what comes across that border. The numbers speak for themselves. We're in trouble. And I look for the leadership, the people standing behind me, Elise, to take this. We got to take this. We got to do a fight. We got to fight for the future of this country. We are in trouble, and it scares the hell out of me.
We will next go to Congressman Tony Gonzalez, as I said, who has hosted numerous delegations of House Republicans to the southern border.
Thank you, Elise. I want to start by first thanking the House Republican leadership, Whip Scalise and Chairwoman Stefanik, who were just down at the border in Eagle Pass. Eagle Pass isn't an easy place to get to. Leader McCarthy was there as well. We had a delegation of 10 folks. Chip Roy, Congressman Roy was there as well. Many trips that we have taken to the border. I want to thank the leadership because we're talking about the border. Because in my district, we feel it every single day. And a lot of times, people will come up to Washington and they will whine. They will complain about all the things that are wrong and they will blame it on the White House. They blame it on Trump or someone else. We're not doing that. Congress is an equal branch of government and we have a plan. And this isn't a Republican issue. It isn't a Democrat issue. It's an American issue, and it starts right here in Congress. It starts right here in the House of Representatives. And I think it starts by keeping Title 42 around. We're going to see, how committed are the Democrats to ensuring Title 42 stays around. What happens if Title 42 goes away? This is what happens. In my district, this weekend, it was 102 degrees. Imagine being smuggled in a trunk and having to travel hundreds of miles in a trunk, 102 degrees. Imagine being smuggled in a train boxcar, right? People, these folks that are coming over illegally are being treated like cattle. And they shouldn't be a political football. This should be about one thing. It should be about helping the American people, ensuring that our border is safe. And that starts here in Congress, not the White House. This is the people's house, not Pelosi. It starts here in Congress. And it'll be interesting to see, will House Democrats join the House Republicans to ensure that Title 42 stays around, because a lot is at stake. I want to turn it over to former Commissioner Mark Morgan.
Thank you, Congressman. Look, I want to echo something Tom Homan said. We have to start being honest with American people that the crisis on our southwest border is about one thing and one thing only: our national security. But border security is synonymous with national security. And here's another false premise that this administration and open border advocates are trying to get the American people to believe, that somehow this is about immigration. It's not. It's about border security. But here's the facts. When you open your borders up to receiving the highest levels of illegal immigration that we've seen in our lifetime, what happens to our border? Well, you don't have to listen to me. Let's listen to the Border Patrol agents that are on the line. We hear them all the time use terms like broken arrow. That phrase is used when your last line of defense have become overwhelmed, meaning we have literally handed our southwest border over to the cartels. And what happens when we overwhelm our system with illegal immigration, the highest levels that we've seen in our lifetime? We have some areas, 50, 60, up to 80% of Border Patrol resources are pulled off the front line, pulled off their national security job to be nothing more than travel agencies for the illegal aliens. That leaves large areas of our border wide open, unpatrolled, unmanned, and unsecured, directly affecting our national security. Tom Homan talked about the almost 750,000 gotaways because our borders are wide open. Think about that. That's more than the entire population of the state of Vermont that have broken into our country illegally and evaded apprehension. And we know, here's a fact that you will not hear from this administration. We know there are very bad people among that 750,000. Did I say they were all bad? No, but that's what they'll say that we're telling people. That's not true. But we have to face reality. There are some really bad people among the 750,000. There are rapists, there are murderers, there are pedophiles, there are aggravated felons, there are gang members. And as Tom Homan said, how many illegal aliens on the FBI's terror screen database are among the 750,000? We have to wake up and we have to start talking this in terms that this is about border security, which is synonymous with national security. And I feel privileged today to be able to talk to the conference, and I am confident that if we can get the right individuals in Congress that know that we should start talking about America, what is in the best interest of American citizens. We know that over 100,000 Americans died from a drug overdose in a 12-month period, and we know that 95% of the fentanyl that kills more adults from 18 to 25 than anything else comes from the southwest border. It's time we start being honest with the American people, and it's time we start framing this about the issue it is. It's about border security, and it's about national security. And with that, you're going to hear a little bit more about the drugs. I'm honored to hand it over to Derek Maltz, who's a retired special agent with the DEA.
Thank you, Mark. So President Biden said that the drug crisis is an unusual and extraordinary threat to the U.S. national security. So the question is, Mr. President, then why the hell is the border wide open? You heard from the experts on the Border Patrol, Department of Homeland Security, ICE, and now you've got to look at the families that are waking up every day. 293 dead kids every day. Every 5 minutes, some kid is dying. Ohio State University last week, pre-med student, thought she was taking an Adderall pill, and it had poisonous fentanyl coming from these filthy, dirty labs in Mexico right over the border. Now, the issue is not a red or a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue. And Congress has to unite all Americans to continue to fight for the families. Look at some of the statistics. The sheriff in Orange County, California, has revealed that over the last 5 years, there's been a 2,200% increase in fentanyl-related deaths in California. In his county, over 1,700%. Just talk to the morgues as bodies are backing up. But most important, and why I am here today, is to support the families that have no voice because nobody's talking about this problem. Where the hell is the border czar? Where is she? We have a crisis at the border, and she was directed to fix it. She doesn't even go there. She doesn't talk about it. What do you think the families are feeling in America when they have nobody even talking about it as they see their 14-year-old kid dead at the computer in the bedroom because they just ordered one pill that was fake on Snapchat or Instagram or social media? The last thing I'm going to say is I think the DEA administrator, Ann Milgram, said it right. Last year alone, the DEA seized enough fentanyl to kill every American. So what the hell are we doing? This is unacceptable. We need to put the politics aside and fight for the American citizens. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Congressman Chip Roy, who's been an extreme advocate for the families, and I thank him for that.
Thanks, sir. I want to thank Chairwoman Stefanik and the leadership for putting this together, and I want to thank all of these warriors in defense of our country for your service to our country. And I'm just a warm-up act for Brandon here in a second. But look, I live in Texas. How many of our kids and how many Americans have to die? It's extraordinary. The CDC just put out a report that the 21 numbers are now 107,000, a 15% increase. We've got the DEA putting out warnings of mass deaths from fentanyl. China producing it, cartels running it up through our southern border. It takes 8 months for Mayorkas to respond to our request last August about how many terrorists are coming into our country, and then they finally say, well, there's 42 on the list. Almost 500 known gang members. That's on the people, by the way, that are apprehended, which are basically people that are coming across the border and turning themselves in. We're not talking about the gotaways. We're not talking about the people that we don't know who they are, who are the ones who are actually trying to evade the law. How many of y'all have done ride-alongs with Border Patrol down in the Rio Grande Valley or down along in Laredo or anywhere in Texas or on the border? How many of y'all sat down at the Rio Grande and met a migrant coming across the river? Have you done that? Have you looked into their eyes? Have you talked to them to understand what's actually going on? The danger that they're in? The fact that they're being used by cartels? And this administration and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle cynically allow that in the false name of compassion to occur. And it's the false name of compassion. Open borders. Go down and talk to the ranchers who find dead bodies on the ranches. Like you say that and you gloss over it and we'll go on. This will be a 5-second clip in some news hit tonight. But Americans and migrants both are suffering. They're dying. All for what? It's a inexcusable breach of the law. The law requires that the border be secured and that we have operational control. The Secretary of Homeland Security brazenly lied under oath to the American people, saying that he and this administration have operational control of the border in the House Judiciary Committee. He lied. He's telling the American people a lie. And they are supposed to detain under the law. And he has no excuse for non-detention. And as a result of his actions and the president's actions, people are dying, including American citizens and migrants. We're here to stand up for the forgotten Americans right now who are taking it on the chin, and we're actually standing up for migrants who are being abused in the false name of compassion. We're not going to continue to stand by while this country is invaded. And that is what is occurring. Empowering cartels, harming Americans, and harming migrants because of this administration's purposeful actions. And we're not going to stand by and allow that to continue to happen. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon Judd.
Thank you, Congressman. What we see today is not humane. What we see today on the border is not compassion. What we're seeing today is we're seeing the empowerment of rich transnational criminal organizations that prey and victimize innocent women and children. We're seeing today an administration that is encouraging policies or enacting policies that are encouraging women and children to put themselves in the hands of some of the most dangerous human beings that exist on the earth today. These people rape, abuse, and at times murder women and children. And it's because this administration's policies are allowing these cartels to go into nations around the world and advertise their services. They tell these people, give me a couple $1,000 and I will get you to the United States-Mexico border. And when you cross the border illegally, you will be rewarded. You will be allowed into the United States. You will be given a de facto legal status. You will then be able to get jobs, put your children in school, and have all of the benefits that exist here in the United States. No wonder people in record numbers today are coming across our borders. No wonder this crisis continues to get bigger and bigger every single month. And it is strictly based upon policies, and it's under the guise of compassion. It is not compassionate, what we are seeing today. The rule of law is what keeps us safe. The rule of law is part of what made this country the greatest nation on earth. And if we enforce the rule of law, we put these transnational organizations out of business. Women and children will no longer be abused by these organizations if we simply follow the rule of law. With that, I'm going to turn the time over to Whip Scalise. Thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank everybody who participated, because America's southern border is under siege, and it is a national crisis. Has been said by many, Tom and others. Border security is national security, and it's at risk right now because Joe Biden turned operational control of our southern border over to the drug cartels. He did it deliberately. He started it day one when he stopped building the wall, and he got rid of the policies that were working. Remain in Mexico, the Northern Triangle agreements. These were all protocols that allowed a legal process of immigration to start working again, and it's completely unwound. Unwound to the point where we've had over 2.5 million people come into our country illegally that we caught. That's larger than the city of Houston, Texas, the fourth largest city in America. More people have come in that we've caught. And as has been pointed out, at least 700,000 that we know of that got away. Dozens of people we caught were on the terrorist watch list, which begs the question, how many more came in that weren't caught that are on the terrorist watch list? And we're not just talking about South and Central American countries. We're talking about over 160 different countries are represented that we know of who've come across our southern border illegally since Joe Biden opened it up when he became president. I went down there like a majority of my Republican colleagues have gone down to the border. We got to embed with our Border Patrol agents. And they'll tell you what the problems are, but they'll also tell you they know how to fix the problem. The real thing that frustrates most people in this country when they're watching this border crisis is that Joe Biden is the one who took the Border Patrol agents off of patrolling the border, won't let them do their job, literally gave them stand-down orders. We saw many Border Patrol agents over at some of these detention facilities, changing diapers and giving processing papers to people to be sent to other states. We don't even know where they're going. We've asked those questions, by the way. I would hope the press asks those questions. How many people does the administration know have come in illegally, and where are they? Where have they been sent? Who's in charge of keeping track of whether or not they're even being followed around to know where they are? If they're supposed to show up in court and they miss their court dates, which by large percentages we see happen too. This shouldn't be happening in the United States of America, and there's lethal consequences. I think what angers most people is when they see that last year, the largest cause of death amongst our young people in America was not COVID. Over 100,000 young people in America died from fentanyl and other drug overdoses from illegal drugs that have come across our open southern border since Joe Biden's been president. Over 100,000 young kids we've lost just last year. And the numbers this year are supposed to be worse. Every community's been affected by this. I had a high school group in from my district not long ago, and I asked them, how many of you know somebody who's died of a drug overdose? Do you know every single kid raised his hand? Every single one. That's going on all across America too. Everybody knows somebody in a community that's been touched by fentanyl and other drugs, made in China, but brought across our southern border by these drug cartels, who, by the way, are making billions of dollars a month trafficking people into our country illegally. So Joe Biden has created a multi-billion-dollar industry. Unfortunately, it's the drug cartels of Mexico who are making that money because he opened the southern border. This has to end. Joe Biden needs to do his job, secure our southern border, and protect America's national security. We're surely going to continue to fight for this to be fixed. We're also going to continue to highlight just how bad it is, because it is a national crisis, not just in Texas and other border states, but as we know, every state now is a border state because of what Joe Biden's done to open up America's southern border. With that, we'll be happy to take questions.
So we've heard that how severe this issue is. If you guys were to take the majority, can you outline a step-by-step solution that you all would plan to try to push through Congress? And if you did take the majority, how would you work with the White House to make sure he doesn't veto some of these policies?
Well, number one, we're going to continue to get the country more engaged, and we're going to roll out policies, and you've heard some of them. You know, you don't need to reinvent the wheel to secure America's border. We had a secure border when Joe Biden took office. He took steps to undo that. So the first thing you would do is go back to the things that were working. Reestablish Remain in Mexico. Keep Title 42, which he's trying to get rid of, and we're actively fighting to keep in place. Go back to those Northern Triangle agreements that we're working to, again, this isn't necessarily people coming in from Mexico. These are people coming in through other countries, then through Mexico, to get into the United States, and not just in South and Central America. So go back to those things that work and let the Border Patrol agents do their job. You talk to Border Patrol agents, they want to fight the drug cartels. They're not allowed to right now. And maybe, Brandon, you could talk about this, because Brandon was with us when I went out there, and he knows one of the Border Patrol agents. Why don't you let him know what other things we can do?
It's very simple. This starts with policy. If we have the proper policy, if we hold people in custody pending a deportation or asylum proceeding, they'll stop coming. And once people stop coming, then you can go after the criminality that exists on the border. So you have to start with policy. So once you implement proper policy, illegal immigration drops to all-time lows. That's the simplest solution to get border security under control. Start with policy, then work out. This does not need to be put on the taxpayer. The taxpayer should not shoulder this burden. This can be done simply through policy by stopping the catch and release. And that's what Whip Scalise is going to work very hard to ensure happens.
If I could jump in real quick, if you don't mind. So this is one thing that we've done, and part of the reason why we're here today, and we really appreciate the time, is a lot of us have been working with a coalition of a variety of conservative think tanks and other border security experts and media and multiple senior executives in the Trump administration to kind of provide just that, some what we believe are effective legislative fixes that are needed to assist the Republican conference, to help empower them to push back on what this administration has done, and specifically Secretary Mayorkas. In fact, that detail, it's not a plan. It's just simply a list of what we think are needed legislative fixes that will help secure our border and help protect our national security. And we're actually going to be releasing that today, and everyone here will have availability of that.
And let me echo what Brandon said on detention. Under President Trump, we detained 55,000 on average. Right now, this administration is releasing practically everybody. Even though they have empty ICE beds that are paid for, already paid for, sit empty. Why are they releasing them? I ask all of you, read the Homeland Security Life Cycle Report. Read it. The Secretary has the same report I can read on the internet that clearly shows if you're held in detention and you get a final order removal, you're removed 99% of the time. However, if you're a family unit, you get order removal, and you're not detained, you leave 6% of the time. If you're UAC, you leave 3% of the time. If you're an adult, about 22% of the time. So this isn't about, well, I'm not going to put them in detention because it's costly. No, this is about releasing people because the Secretary has the same data I do. The plan is not only let them in, they're never going to leave. If anybody thinks these millions come in are going to have judicial process and be removed by ICE, remember what the Secretary said? In the middle of the invasion, the Secretary says, being in the country illegally is not enough reason to be arrested. ICE, you can no longer step on a worksite enforcement operation, even though the number one reason people come to the country get a job. This is by design. This administration is called chaos, and I spent my career in this, and I'll echo what everybody else said. I found enough dead bodies through my career. I've talked to little girls who were raped numerous times. And for those of you here that hate the Trump administration and think I'm a bad guy, I've never been more proud and worked for the Trump administration because we created the most secure border, this group back here, this nation's ever had. Illegal immigration down 80%, 35-year low. So let me ask you a question. When illegal immigration at a 35-year low, how many pounds of fentanyl is not getting to the country because the border was vigilant? How many people aren't dying of overdoses? How many women aren't being raped? How many children aren't dying? President Trump's policies saved lives, not just secure the border. A secure border saves lives. And this administration has thrown that all out. They know this. All they got to do is dust off the plans and regain control of our border. But that's not their plan.
First, totally unrelated. Someone dropped a $10 bill. I'd want someone to tell me because that's a couple gallons of gas. It's right behind me there.
Barely 2 gallons. Barely 2 gallons.
Which brings me to my question. I want to get your reaction on the CPI this morning. The energy index fell about 2.7%. Gasoline index fell 6.1%. Doesn't that show what the president's done executively? Doesn't that show what the president's done on gas prices and energy prices?
Actually, if you look at gas prices, first of all, it's over $100 a barrel today. I hope Joe Biden's not celebrating that. He might be because he doesn't want American energy produced, but he's begging people like Putin and other dictators to produce energy. But if you look at the price of oil, a gallon of gasoline, it's higher today than when Joe Biden raided Spro the last time, which, by the way, was the third time he's raided Spro. He's taken almost a half of America's strategic petroleum reserve out of the reserves and put it on the world market, which, by the way, go follow where it's gone. Most of that oil has been sold to China. Not here in America. Joe Biden sent that to China. And so gas prices today are higher than when he raided Spro the last time, which was the third time he's done it.
Right, but it is declining. Doesn't that show that progress is being
So
made?
gas prices are higher today than they were a few weeks ago. Families are paying over $150 in many cases to fill their vehicle, and they're angry about it. No, by the way, if you're trying to drive to the grocery store to buy baby food, you can't because there's no baby food on the shelf. This is an embarrassment beyond what any developed country in the world has seen, and it's all because Joe Biden and the incompetent people running in his administration have gotten us to crisis after crisis, a border crisis, an inflation crisis, a gas crisis, foreign policy crisis from Afghanistan down, encouraging the brutal dictators like Putin to go out and do things that they surely would have never thought of doing under Donald Trump. Our country and the world is weaker because of Joe Biden's reckless actions. That's what we're fighting.
Last
Yeah.
question. On Roe versus Wade, if that ruling is support a federal nationwide ban on abortion?
Well, first of all, I hope that the ruling comes out soon, and I hope it's the ruling that was leaked. I'm disappointed that there was a leak, and I'm disappointed that this White House is still encouraging people to break federal law and go and protest in front of the houses of Supreme Court justices, as Jen Psaki encouraged yesterday. And they've had multiple positions on this. But if you think about where we are, we're a party who defends life, and we would celebrate a ruling that allows elected leaders to defend life and debate in open public what those laws should be in every state and in Washington. Clearly, we will move day one, if we get the majority, on the Born Alive Act. So states like New York can't murder a baby born outside the womb and call it abortion. It's murder. I'll show you right now where Chuck Schumer is trying to bring our country. Chuck Schumer right now is bringing a bill on the Senate floor today to make America in the category of China, North Korea, and Guinea. That's where we would be. We would be in the territory of countries that allow abortion on demand as widespread as we've seen it anywhere in the world. Very few countries allow what Chuck Schumer is trying to bring. That's how radical their party is. They want abortion on demand funded by taxpayers in the United States. That's not where America is. We're a party of life. And again, as we roll out our commitment to America, we're going to show how we're going to secure America's border. We're also going to show how we defend life and the other values that are so important to this country. And by the way, America is a country founded on the principles of, there were 3 inalienable rights, by the way, that were granted by our founding fathers. It was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The first of those inalienable rights is life. We will defend life, and we hope this decision comes out soon. One last question.
Quick follow-up,
Yeah.
Chairwoman Stefanik. Do you think that the Biden administration and the Justice Department right now is approaching the protest that we've seen outside the Supreme Court justices' homes and also the attack on the Wisconsin pro-life group? Do you think that they're approaching that with the same intensity as they did with protesters at those school board meetings over the mandates? Well, certainly not. The fact that you have the White House press secretary encouraging people to break the law, it is unlawful. It is against the law in this country to protest a sitting judge. We want to maintain the independence of our courts, and the fact that that is being encouraged by this administration is shameful. It's unconstitutional. It's meant to intimidate the justices. This should outrage every single American. What makes Republicans consistent is we speak out against violent acts, no matter who commits them. What makes the Democrats inconsistent is that they speak out only in moments when they believe, only in certain moments. So, for example, on January 6th, we spoke out against the violence on January 6th, as we did throughout the entire summer with BLM protests. It is a disgrace that they have not spoken out against the heinous attacks on the pro-life organization in Wisconsin. We stand strongly with the rule of law. We pray for the justices to have resolve, and we pray for the future of life in this country, which, as our whip laid out, is the most important value that we stand for as Republicans. I certainly don't support the abortion-on-demand, taxpayer-funded disgrace in New York State. My specific position is what House Republicans, we support the Born Alive bill. Every House Republican has stood strongly. We've worked with outside organizations, and that's where we believe the American people are. New York State, and again, these radical states, are woefully out of touch with the vast majority of Americans who, number one, do not support taxpayer-funded abortion. 80% of Americans oppose late-term abortions. So the fact that New York is trying to sell itself as an abortion-on-demand state is outrageous, and it really concerns me that you have Democratic leaders who are advocating for murdering of babies. They're spending more time focusing on that than they are focusing on the supply chain crisis when it comes to baby formula, which is a crisis hurting babies and families across this country. Thank you very much.
The idea of being called ultra-MAGA